Okay, so the next form of a linear equation we're going to learn is point-slope form. And in this form, basically from what it says, you need a point and you need the slope. So point-slope form is the form y minus, and I already realize this is y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. So when we graph this, x1 and y1 are both part of an ordered pair, a point. Okay, so these two numbers being these two variables being subtracted are going to be represented by numbers. So the slope is the same thing that we've been working with the past two lessons. So write an equation in point-slope form. We are given the point, we are given the slope. So the way I would write this is y minus the y value of the point, which is 6, equals the slope, -5, times x minus the x value of the point, which is -3. Now I'm going to clean this up. Y minus 6 equals -5 times x plus 3. And that's what I care about right now. Since it's y minus the y value, x minus the x value, that's why I write y minus 6 and x plus 3. As far as graphing point-slope form, and again, I don't know if I was off that day, point-slope form, the graph of this equation, well, the point is the point 4, 7. And the slope is -4/5. So this will be a little goofy to graph because our graph goes up by 2's, but we can still do it. So the point 4, 7. Right 4 up to 7, which is right in between 6 and 8. Slope of -4/5 means to count that slope from the point, I go down 4 and right 5. Down 4 and right 5. And then I do my best to draw a straight line through those points. All I need is 2 points. But essentially, before, when we graph slope-intercept form, we did graph a point. That point just happened to be the y-intercept. Now with point-slope form, this point that we start with can be anywhere on the graph. And then all we do is we count the slope from that specific point. Moving ahead, use the point -2, -3 to write an equation of the line. So we have our point, but we don't have the slope. Now for this particular line, we know the slope is going to be positive. And it's nice because we're given the graph. The slope, we go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right 1, 2, 3. So our slope is 7/3, 7/3. So our equation, y minus -3, is really y plus 3, equals 7/3 times x plus 2, x minus -2. So you may have to count the slope, okay? You may have to count the slope if you're given a graph. So keep that in mind as well. But we need the slope and we need a point, a single point. Now I could have written our equation using this point as well, using the point 1,4. They'd be the same equation essentially. They'd graph the same line. Moving ahead, using a table to write an equation. The table shows the number of gallons of water, Y, in a tank after X hours. The relationship is linear. What is an equation in point-slope form that models the data? What does the slope represent? That is an important question. So, for this, I need 2 things. I need the slope, and I need a point. So to find the slope, I'm going to pick any 2 points and find the slope between those 2 points. I'm just going to pick the first and second points. So the first point is the point 2, 3,320. The second point is the point 3, 4,570. So if I'm going back to finding the slope using the slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. The nice thing about this is that this is going to be over 1. So the math really isn't as bad as it seems, even with these big numbers. 1250. So the slope is really just 1250. Okay? And the point we pick, I could literally pick any of these 4 points. So I usually pick the point that's got the smallest 2 numbers if I can, but it really doesn't matter. So I'm going to pick the point 2, 3,320. That's my point. Any other one of these points would have worked. Okay? So my equation, let's do the equation in blue. Y minus the y value of my point equals 2, the slope, times x minus the x value of my point, which is 2. So, an equation in slope-intercept form, point-slope form, check. What does the slope represent? Well, if we look at this table, over time, we got to think about what's happening to the gallons of water in the tank. What's happening to the volume? Well, the volume is increasing, right? It's increasing at a certain rate. So we could say the slope represents a rate. It represents how fast the tank is filling with water. And the speed it's filling with water is 1,250 gallons an hour. So slope is always a rate. In a context problem, it's usually something over time. It usually tells you how fast something is happening. Okay? So rate, comparing 2 quantities. This one, it compares volume and time. So it tells us how fast the tank is filling with water. If these numbers were going down, that would mean the tank is draining its water. So for our last example, converting to slope-intercept form. So the first step to converting to slope-intercept form, I'm just going to rewrite our equation. Y minus 3320 equals 2 times x minus 2. So we want this to become y equals mx plus b form. So a quick way to do that, it's basically 2 steps. I'm just solving for y. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to distribute, I'll use blue for this, distribute 2 through the right-hand side. Left-hand side stays the same. This becomes 2x minus 4. And all I have to do to solve for y, I only have to do one step to solve for y. Add this to both sides. So y is 2x plus. This would be 3316. And that is it. That is it in slope-intercept form. What does the y-intercept represent? The y-intercept, we've talked about this, the y-intercept represents a starting value. And I'm going to do a better job of describing that in the context of this problem. In the context of this problem, the y-intercept represents the gallons of water in the tank before it was being filled. So before we started filling up the tank with whatever method we were using, a faucet, a bucket, whatever, but filling the tank This represents the initial value of the water in the tank, the starting value of the water in the tank. So those things are still consistent, a rate, a starting value. So now you're probably ready for the practice. Remember, the checkpoints are going to be the most important thing for me to tell whether you kind of understand what's going on or not. So make sure you're working through everything and working towards that checkpoint.